Professor Nambiar, then my young friends who made this meeting possible, Ayush, Harsh, Dharni. I should have taken Dharni's name first. You don't mind, equal. Men and women are equal. So, just put this up.
This outside said the most.
Okay. Right. I'm not taking this session. The session is being taken by my colleague and very good friend. He is like a family friend of mine, Chamanlal. Actually, I met him first in Punjab when I was the DGP there and fighting terrorism. Nobody wanted to come to Punjab. I asked so many officers of the police, including from Maharashtra, Sikh officers also. Nobody wanted to come. But Mr. Chamanlal is one person who said, yes, I will come. And of course, KPS Gill, he was another. He was from the Assam cadre and Mr. Chamanlal from the Madhya Pradesh cadre. Now there were two different approaches. Mr. Gill was a muscular type, wanted to kill everyone, and not the innocent ones were the terrorists. And Mr. Chamanlal wanted to talk to the people, explain to them that this is wrong. Terrorism is not going to succeed, and it is morally, intellectually, everything, it is wrong. And this is not the way to approach your objective. So we had two different types. And I don't know, I was the head of the police, and I felt, well, to some extent, Mr. Gill also is required. But much more important, people won't believe it, is the work that Mr. Chamanlal did. Because going to the villages, talking to them, talking to the Sikhs, and telling them that, look, this is a wrong approach, not going to work, and also it is immoral to go on killing innocent people. And that, I think, was much more important, because that is the classical way of fighting terrorism. You go after the terrorists, you have to go after them because they are brainwashed, they are not going to listen. Whereas the others, the great majority of people who belong to that community, and give them tacit support, those have to be won over. Once that oxygen is not available to the terrorists, terrorism fades. You may kill terrorists. Today in J&K, the government is out killing terrorists. You may kill them, they will be replaced immediately. This is what we have seen in Ireland also. I have gone to Ireland, discussed this with the Chief Constable of Belfast and of Dublin, and they say that it is not possible to finish off terrorism by just killing terrorists. You have to win over the hearts and minds of the community to which the terrorists belong. This is, unless you do that, you are not going to finish off with terrorism. That is why the Islamic form of terrorism is not Islamic. I mean, it's the jihadi, whatever you may call it. There are certain people who think that by doing these terrorist activities, they are going to achieve objective. They are not going to. They will only create trouble for themselves and for their community. So I went and spoke to Mr. Manmohan Singh when he was the Prime Minister. He was a friend of mine because I knew him from Punjab days. And I told him that this is how we finished it off in Punjab. Please understand that. And he did understand. He spoke to the CM of Maharashtra, told him to please try and do what Mr. Ribeiro is trying to do, but I don't think they really understood. Anyway, so this is about terrorism. But today, Mr. Chamanlal, who is a great human rights proponent, after he retired, he has lived in the forests. For 7 years he was living in Veerappan area. You know that dacoit who was killed. He was a gentleman called Veerappan. And Mr. Chamanlal has lived in those forests for 7 years till he was knocked down by a drunken tribal, not intentionally. He was going for his walk, and now he has a problem with his feet, so that is why he didn't go back there. Otherwise, that is what he misses. He wants to live with the poorest people, the tribals, the scheduled castes, the Muslims. That is what he has been doing all his life after retirement. And he is an absolutely marvelous person. I've not come across in the police for the 40 years I've been there. I've not come across. So you will be very happy to hear him. It's going to be a little long, but do hear, because he's a very good speaker. He has a problem with his throat, but even then he'll put it across to you. You won't go to sleep, that much I guarantee you. Because I've known, even my wife, who doesn't normally come for such, always wants to come and hear him, because he really keeps people enthralled. He is going to speak to you about the Northeast. Northeast is a part of this country. People don't understand that. They think they are Chinese or something. Actually, besides the Indo-Aryan and the Dravidian, we also have the Mongoloid people. These are who live in the Northeast. There are quite a number of them. All those states are like that. The Indo-Burman tribes. And I think people must understand they are part of this country. They belong to us. Don't treat them like foreigners. I remember once going to Belur and Halebid in Karnataka, the great temples there. And I had with me a Gurkha driver. I was in the CRP in those days. The Gurkha driver, this fellow who, you always have these tourist guides there. So they were harassing him, and they were talking in English, and he wasn't understanding what the man wanted. Finally, he got so fed up, he came to me and said, "Saab, jara dekh lijiye, hum mujhe tang kar rahe." So I asked him, "What do you want?" So he said, "I'm telling this Japanese gentleman something about Hinduism." So I said that he is a very devout Hindu, he is a Nepali, and he is not a Japanese. Because the people, they don't understand. Everybody with chinky eyes, they think that he's some Chinese or Japanese. He's not. So you must understand. And what are the problems of the Northeast? Why there is insurgency? All that will be explained to you because it's good for young people to be exposed to all the problems in this country. The biggest problems, of course, that we face and which PCGT tries to address are corruption and communalism. Unless we fight these two evils, we are not going to advance as a country. Take it from me. Even communalism. And this government must understand that. Just by going after the minorities is not going to help. You have to understand that these two are great evils. Now other parts of it, like human rights, then also Northeast, which Mr. Chamanlal is going to talk to you about, I leave the days to him, because he is going to take some time, after which you can ask him questions. Thank you so much.
I have been a volunteer for the Northeast after I left Punjab. In fact, I was removed from Punjab because of my differences with Mr. Gill, and because I had annoyed the powers that be. I was sent back to my cadre. And then after a year or so, they wanted somebody for the Northeast, and I volunteered. So I was rehabilitated and made IGPSF Shillong, and I had jurisdiction over Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur and Nagaland. Later on, I became the chief of Nagaland police for nearly 3 years. And after I joined this National Human Rights Commission on pro bono basis, I visited Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim and other places. India's northeast is one of the most picturesque and trouble-torn areas of the world. It is an area with complex problems of insurgency, development, and governance. It's an area which is in perpetual turmoil. It comprises 7 states: Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, and now Arunachal Pradesh, and now Sikkim is also added, and also Darjeeling Hill area of West Bengal. So now you take 9 units instead of 7. Now this area covers 8% of the land mass and 4% of the population. And there is uneven spatial distribution. The density varies. In Arunachal Pradesh, overall density is less than the national average, 216, national about 300. Arunachal has only 8 persons per square kilometer. Only Assam has 105, which is near to the national average. Assam covers about 70% of the population and about 30%. So there is uneven spatial, but that is one feature. Another feature, it is not a homogeneous area. It's a heterogeneous. All these states are different from each other in respect of their origin, in respect of the migratory routes their inhabitants followed, in respect of their traditions, their customs, their laws, everything. So they are totally different from each other. Then the other feature of interest would be literacy rate is higher than the national average, except in Arunachal Pradesh and parts of Assam. 3 states have declared English to be their official language: Meghalaya, Mizoram, and Nagaland. The area is predominantly tribal area. There are 635 scheduled tribes in the country and 200 are in the northeast. They speak 400 languages and dialects of Tibeto-Burman and Austro-Asiatic origin. The other prominent feature is that these are spoon-fed states. These states, or some of them, were created not because of economic viability, but due to political reasons, because of assertion of identity. So they are special category states, which means whereas other states get help in the matter of their planning, development, 70% grant, 70% loan and 30% grant. These special category, they get on 90% grant and 10% loan. So over the years, that per capita development expenditure in Northeast 1,000 times more than in the rest of the country. If you take in terms of population, so much money has been pumped into that area. And despite all this, things have not improved, and to bring about improvement in the area, then they created a Northeast Council in 72. The purpose was to exploit fully, to tap the resources. Northeast is rich in terms of natural resources. Power potential. Brahmaputra power potential is 59,000 megawatts. Not even 5% has been exploited so far. Then you have oil wealth. Then you have timber. Then you have tea. These are the natural wealth. But the economy of this area has been consumption subsistence based. And they felt that they're still being exploited in the colonial way. And that is the first thing I want you to appreciate, that the Northeast people, they have a feeling that they are victims of chronic neglect. they have distrust of outsiders, particularly the government of India, and fear of being swamped by outsiders. They are zealously guarding their identity, and they are very, very sensitive about it. And the fear of loss of identity is the main cause of insurgency that I would explain to you. So this NEC, when it was all, it took up tapping the water potential, creating a network, roads, etc. But the results have not been commensurate at all for various reasons. Then donor, a department of Northeastern region, another ministry has also been created. So all this has been done. But that feeling, it is still there. And I'll be speaking about that feeling which is responsible. The other feature about the economists is when I say that they feel that we exploited. For example, Assam. When Assam agitation was in full swing, the issues were the agricultural tax, oil royalty, and the processing of tea. All the processing plants were outside the Northeast. None of them was in Assam. Later on, as a result of agitation here. So Northeast is a captive market for the goods produced in rest of India. The benefits are not actually available to the people. There is capital outflow from the Northeast, and that is not reinvested in the Northeast. And this is what led to the frustration of the youth, lack of opportunities, and the youth turned to either insurgency or alcohol and drug. So drug addiction, because the Northeast is in the vicinity of Golden Triangle, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and the narco mafia of Burma, Myanmar, is finding inroads into it. So earlier it was only a transit matter that heroin used to go through Manipur. Now it has become consumption area also. And increasing number of the youth addicted, and the incidence of HIV is very high among the very high risk states that is there. Not only this, the youth, they shun physical work. They want only government job. Another interesting feature I may give you, ratio between government employee and population. National average is 1:130, employee for 130. In Nagaland it is 1:17. In Arunachal Pradesh it is 1:37. Only in Assam it is 1:105. So only government jobs they want to seek. And since you have too many government employees, no one seems to be working. And this is one very defining feature that they are not interested in. But things have changed, and I will tell you the change that we are noticing that is very hopeful. The other thing that I want you to appreciate is that these communities had for years lived and practiced the purest form of democracy. The wisdom of the elders, their consensus, and the appointment of Gaon Buddha and other officials who ruled. Village as a republic, that was in existence. And it has been continuing. In Nagaland, when I was DGP, as recently as in 96 hour, I found that there are a number of fields, and when they are ready for harvest, they don't work individually. All of them would assemble at one field, work there, that man will feed them, next day they will go to another. So that communal life, that kind of collective thing, that's it. No orphans, no destitutes, no widow who cannot be looked after. It is not legal imperative, it is moral imperative. Community, the way these people live. And what have we done? On these well-governed, well-administered communities, we impose the Westminster model, where people are elected democratically there. And this is what caused rampant corruption, massive political corruption in the Northeast. The politics of North is informed by defections, horse trading, governments suddenly collapse and are immediately resurrected because they want to be in alignment with the central government. So there is no question of any ideology, etc. So this is what has been causing all this massive immorality of the model. And we should also appreciate one fact, that these communities have suddenly graduated from a near primitive status. Whereas we took 300, 400 years to reach a certain level of modernization, they got it within 30, 40 years. So naturally, they find it difficult to cope with the democratic institutions. So this mismatch is there. And that is why we have rampant corruption. But the other thing, before I take up insurgency, is that is church. Many people feel that church has given them some encouragement on these lines. Such a church and missionaries have done a great job in bringing education, making them modern, making them Western. And I noticed that when they became Western, modern, they did renounce some old customs and they adopted new Christian values. But nowhere did church or anybody from church give them any encouragement as regards this secession or insurgency. But still, one thing happened, that church also helped in promoting a feeling of separatism, that they are separate from the mainstream. Because this feeling of being Nagas and others, this one feature common. Northeast, my friends, has never been part of the imperial Mauryan Empire, Gupta Empire, Mughal Empire. Only the British one, the first one to conquer them. The British conquered Northeast in 1826, Jandavar Treaty, when they ousted Burmese from Assam. Assam, earlier it was Ahoms. They take pride in that, Thailand only. Later on it was Burmese, 1826, the British. But British decided to administer Northeast loosely by following a policy of non-intervention. They allowed their institutions, political, social, economic, to continue unaltered, their customary law, their traditions. Loose control, and how did they achieve it? 1826 Assam, by a series of punitive expeditions. It took them 50-60 years. Kohima was ultimately captured in 1878. Garo, Jaintia, Khasi, Meghalaya during 1822 to 1869. Mizoram, Lushai Hills in 1889. They captured all that, but what they did was they established the headquarters at Shillong in 1878, and in Nagaland they appointed a DC at Kohima. Their aim was not to extend their governance and administration to these areas, but just to take steps to protect the outsider plainsmen. So if a Naga wanted to come to the plains, he required a license. Only then, otherwise he would indulge in headhunters. They were fond of that. They carry baskets. And baskets, when I asked, baskets were not for grocery and vegetables, etc. They used to carry the severed head in that basket. I was once given as a souvenir the smallest basket, and then they explained to me that this smallest basket is given to the bravest Naga. Why? He brings the head of a child, and for killing a child you have to go deep inside the village, and so one who gets his basket full of this trophy, he is declared as the bravest person. So the British only ensured that the plains people are protected. The rest of the thing they did not change. They allowed them to continue with the culture, which is a very, very important factor. And that's why Nagas claim that they have never been part, as I told to you, and they claim that all along they have been independent. I'll come to it later. First, let me finish. The other thing that church, I was telling you that church, I used to talk to them very freely. You know, Nagaland has declared a slogan, Nagaland for Christ. This is the only state which says Nagaland for Christ. So since they liked me very much for various reasons, I was very frank and they tolerated me. I said, tell me, do you think Christ will be happy if he visits Nagaland when you have so much bloodshed, so much killing? And he would not. I said, which 10 commandments you are not violating? Because he would say, stealing the money which belongs to enemy government of India, bribing a government, this is beyond, this is outside the ambit of 10 commandments. So they had their own funny way of looking at it. But nowhere did they encourage violence. But still, I was bold enough to tell the priest, you did not and you don't encourage violence. But I think you can do something to stop these factional killings. So I think they had a potential. They could have used that to bring violence down. Whereas I found that they were fearful. They should not have been fearful because devout Christians were still there. So they did not play the expected role as regards bringing an end to violence. But to say that they have encouraged insurgency in any way, I will never agree. So I thought I will explain this point to you. The other thing that special feature is, there is a debate in our country about Article 370. And whenever there is NDA government, this debate is intensified. And we question the status of Kashmir, which has a special relationship governed by Article 370. How many of you know that there is an Article 371? Similar. 371A applies to Nagaland, C applies to Manipur, D applies to Arunachal Pradesh, F applies to Sikkim. So all these. What does this article say? This simply says that these areas are different. They become a part of Indian Union, has to be differentiated. It is all right that they are an integral part of India, a toot ang as they say, all right. But how did it happen? We cannot ignore that. And that is where they said that 371, like 370, gives safeguards as regards the ownership of land and resources to the people of Northeast. It gives them protection as regards these customary laws, traditional practices. And one thing most important is, it gives the governor the special role as regards law and order. Let me shock you by saying no governor has used this provision. There was a governor, a mentor of mine like Mr. Ribeiro, General Nair. He was governor in Manipur. He started using this provision and questioning the chief minister and the political leaders about deteriorating law and order situation. Others say it is none of the governor's job, it is ours. He questioned and he was asked to leave, and he chose to leave. He did not accept it. So this provision where governor has got, so the political appointees will not do it. Only people who are committed to India and they will do it. But this is one provision of Northeast which people do not know, and this is not being implemented properly. And that's why we have got unrest. We have got feeling of being exploited. If we do, for example, there are other provisions. You know, in our constitution, there is a provision of 6th schedule. That provision is meant for meeting the demands of diverse identity of various tribes. So within a state, for example, within Assam, there is Bodoland, and if Bodoland could not get justice, the 6th schedule meant that there will be functional autonomy given to them. The 6th schedule provision was also used in several places, but since there has not been honest implementation, things have not implemented. But another fact which I want you to appreciate is, these states were not opposed in any way to accession to India. Their objection was to be grouped with Assam. Manipur was a princely state, joined Indian Union 49. Tripura joined in 48. Mizoram, Meghalaya were also created out there. So Assam did not address the minority identities of these diverse communities while asserting its linguistic identity. And they declared, for example, Bodos as other Assamese other than Assamese, whereas Bodos wanted to be enumerated as separate community with a language of their own, with a culture and history of their own, which was denied. So Assam's big brother attitude was responsible for this feeling of nowhere did they say any, except Nagaland. Nagaland has to be dealt with separately. All other, they were not against accession to India. They were only opposing being made part of Assam. Now, insurgency is synonymous with the Northeast. And insurgency started with the assertion of Naga claim that we have always been separate. Don't ask us separatist because we were never part of you. Don't say secessionist because we were never part of you. The question does not arise. In 1929, when Simon Commission visited, Nagas made a representation before them. And this also concerned church. Church somehow or other gave them a feeling at that time that after the British leave, war ends, these communities will be made independent. So that assurance also acted on their mind. But in Simon Commission, they made a representation that we are happy with the British, but when British leave and make India free, let us revert to our old position and we don't want to be part of it. So insurgency in Northeast, main insurgencies are Naga insurgency, which is mother of all insurgencies. Then Meitei insurgency, Manipur. I'll be touching upon this briefly. Then Ulfa in Assam. Then Bodo in Assam. Then you have got Tripura. And some in a nascent form in Meghalaya also. But insurgency has to do with the question of identity, ethnicity, ethnic assertion, and subnationalism. And their demands were outright secession, like Nagas. And Bodos now say that Meiteis, to varying degrees of autonomy. Autonomy means that they are functionally in a position to look after their interest. Autonomy is the best solution to self. And autonomy, enhanced autonomy, does not mean disintegration. I use this expression in Punjab. I use in JNK everywhere. In fact, enhanced autonomy is required for correct federalization and decentralization. When I was IG in Shillong, when there was a high-level conference, I was a very junior officer, but I spoke about nationalism and subnationalism. I said, you all say that this is a problem of subnationalism. Let us accept Naga nationalism, Mizo nationalism, Khasi nationalism, and let us harmonize it in pan-Indian nationalism. If you accept these subnationalism, then your Indian nationalism will come stronger and there will be no second. But if you say that in Indian nationalism there is no place for Naga nationalism, Mizo nationalism, Garo Khasi nationalism, then this endless conflict will continue. So that is the root cause which we have. Then the other cause for insurgency has been economic deprivation. One sees it rampantly there. I was DGP in Nagaland. I used to travel by road very frequently. And once I decided that from Kohima to Zonopoto, I will just try to see how many tribals I find on the roads who are not wearing shoes, more than 90%. And I told the Chief Minister, sir, I saw this today. and we are getting so much money. In zone of Bordeaux, people were buying water, 20 rupees a cherry cannot be killed. So this kind of mismanagement, this kind of rampant, because the government of India, I'll say very openly, was promoting the interest of some elites, and those elites have become very, very rich and important, and it is at the cost of the common people of the country. And this is really causing interest, and all the resources, the way they are being squandered. So the other thing, root cause of it is, as I said, the fear of being swamped by outsider. This is psychological. This has to end. But the way government of India approached this problem as a law and order problem, to be dealt with militarily. So Northeast defining feature is militarization, heavy presence of military. Now military is useful. We are using it, J&K, Punjab is using it. But military is used as aid to civil power. The purpose is to help the civil power to strengthen the civil power. The purpose cannot be in suppression of civil power. So not in aid of, but so everywhere in the Northeast, it is the dominance of military that is caused. For example, in Nagaland, as they say, that we came to know India only through the military and security forces. Another thing about Nagaland, which I verified, one can hardly find a house which has escaped the atrocities of army. These days in Chhattisgarh, when we hear about dislocation of villages, Salwa Judum, when people are relocated, much worse was done in the Northeast, in Mizoram. There was aerial strafing bombing on civilian area. Can you ever think that such a thing happened? Because that was the time when human rights were not in fashion. Nobody questioned that. But that history of repression is very much there. And the government of India thought that we can buy loyalty by giving grant. So I used to call that rupee rum culture. Government of India started giving rupee, that means grant, and army started distributing rum so that the people are enfeebled and they do not do it. And it has been going on for a long time. The entire society was debased because funds, endless funds, huge funds, Northeast is the source of huge funds. And funds go to whom? Funds go to politicians, bureaucrats, contractors and businessmen. And when I talk to you, their village as a republic, earlier it was an egalitarian society. Tribals, no caste, no class, classless society. Cheerful, happy, honest, hospitable people. Free of the vices called untouchability, bride burning, harassment, etc. All equal. Ideal society. And what we have now, that earlier elite, which was Gaon Buda, Dubashi and village elders, is replaced by a new elite. And the new elite is politician, bureaucrat, contractor and businessman. Contractor is a great institution there. In Manipur market, the posh shops selling saris. So there used to be one counter, contractor sari. I said, I don't understand what contractor sari. Said, this sari only contractors can purchase. So we have got a separate class out there. And contractors means all this money that was meant for the tribals. These licenses were sold, they were not interested. And Marwadi. The British did one thing which contributed to this is they brought through systematic infiltration large number of people from East Pakistan for cultivation purposes. So a huge population in Assam, it was engineered, it was brought there. Then the other thing is they brought from Gangetic plains Biharis and Muslims for tea industry, and they allowed Rajasthani Marwadis to come there as business traders, and they have caused all this havoc. So insurgency, when we see, insurgency is not ideological except Nagaland. In fact, Nagaland, I say, is the only insurgency based on idea in the whole world. I mean, they are, because as I said, they say that we have from 1929 fighting. And you know, they declared their independence a day before we became independent. 14th August is the they declared it. Then there was Naga National Council, and they passed a resolution that Naga National Council would look after the legacy. First general election, total boycott. 93% was voter turnout, 99% voted against it. So they did. And then later on, 56, they took the route of armed conflict. And later on, it's not time for me to explain. But here, another good point of the church I was saying is that Michael Scott, a church missionary, had played a very important role in ceasefire in Nagaland in 1964, together with Chief Minister Chalia and Jayaprakash Narayan. But main feature of Naga insurgency, you see, there are factions, and ultimately there became two factions. Now, NSCN, Naga Socialist of Nagaland, and Isaac Su IM and Kaplan, these two factions. More Nagas have been killed in factional fights than at the hands of security forces. Nagas never indulge in terrorism. Try to understand it carefully. Terrorism is indiscriminate killing of innocent people. Terrorism is not an ideology. Terrorism is a tactics. And this tactics is applied by militants when they are desperate, when they are hopeless. When they see that nothing can be achieved, they start killing the innocent people. Nagas never killed people in a theater, people in a bus stand. Only once, I remember in my time, they bombed Dimapur police, this railway station, because the Assam Rifle contingent was going, and 3 or 4 Nagas were killed. I know how profusely for days together they apologized to the people that this was not part of our things. So the violence of that particular group is, but factional fights, terrible. Suspected informants, terrible. Security forces, so that one. So this continued, and then in 97 the community realized it is futile. The goal is unrealistic. The militants can only add to our misery and suffering. And they told them that you are only adding to the blood and tears. And then they realized that they must talk, come forward. So there was 97 suspension, cessation of violence, and the talk started. And I must say, if you follow correctly, that such a situation is created, the credit goes to security forces, because army can create a situation despite excesses, etc. When the violence seems futile, only then they will talk, otherwise they will not. So this is there. But here I give credit, as Mr. Ribeiro said, to the people of Nagaland. They decided, thus far and no more. We don't give you. And the leaders were aging. Muiva and Isaac, one has died, another is also very old. And they also realized that the younger generation is not fit enough for guerrilla life. So transforming character of insurgency from jungle guerrilla warfare, it became an urban militant movement. We used to call it a jean gypsy culture. They would wear jeans, have gypsies, move about in towns, unfit to live the life of guerrillas in jungles. So this talk has been going on. Nothing has happened since 97. Only they say framework agreement framework, which has been not disclosed. Many people suspect the intentions of Government of India. You should know, they feel that Government of India will counter Naga unity by keeping Nagas divided, fighting each other, and this stalemate will continue. Not true exactly, but not entirely baseless, because I saw there how Government of India, security forces have been taking decisions as regards Naga lives, etc. But one thing positive has happened, that as a result of this suspension of peace, the youth, they realize that their future lies outside Nagaland. You have increasing number of girls, boys now in airlines, hotels, restaurants, and the way they are being accepted and the way they are being channelized from the path of insurgency and action is a very positive development. The another positive development is, supposing these talks fail, and maybe these fail because the positions are very rigid positions. The talks are held at 2 points: question of sovereignty and question of Nagaland. They want that sovereignty, the sovereign state. So we cannot have a sovereign Nagaland and also a sovereign India. It's not possible. So this is totally unacceptable. And they also realize that the concept of sovereignty has undergone change. No country in the world is truly sovereign because of economic independence. So that idea, concept of sovereignty has no meaning. But Nagaland says Greater Nagaland. There are Nagas living in Manipur, in Assam, in Arunachal Pradesh. They want those areas also to be made part of Naga. It would never be possible, because those legislatures have made it very clear that you cannot, in Manipur, the way the legislation was there. So the solution ultimately lies to keep the territories undisturbed and work out some cooperative arrangement of administration, cultural control through cooperative institutions of non-government or non-state, which is possible. You have great, for example, in Tamil Nadu, in Sri Lanka, they had pan-Sri Lankan Tamil. So this kind of thing ultimately will. So position in Nagaland as regards killing staff. But let's have no illusion. Even when suspension of violence, recruitment is on. They are recruiting people. Tax collection is on. Coercion, they call it tax collection. Because when I was there, we knew every department, it was the responsibility of the drawing disbursing officer to deduct that amount, say 25% of the wages for the whole year. And that used to be collected. And there are so many factions collecting, then there was some resentment. And 70% are occupying 10% territory. Tribals have ST status, opportunity for job, but these don't have. And these, when I said conservative Hindus, so I am reminded of something personal. A batchmate of mine, Gogoi, from Assam, was allotted to Manipur cadre. As an ASP, he fell in love with a Meitei girl. He was a Hindu, Ahom from Assam, but they did not agree. And one fine morning, he took his jeep, went outside the city and killed himself. They were so staunch at it, and now they just want nothing to do with it and get back to their still ancient glory and status that they. The Manipur insurgency started with UNLF, United National Liberation Front, and the number of factions you have there. Communist Party of Kangle Pak, they call it the ancient name now. Then Kangle Pak Communist Party, then People's Liberation Army, I think 9 or 10 factions are there. Their leader, main Pisheshwar Singh, he was arrested in 1982. He had gone to Lhasa and trained. After his arrest, the Manipur insurgency lost momentum. But when, as I said, they become hopeless and desperate as regards their final outcome, then senseless killings continue. And that is why Manipur is totally uncontrollable. Worst at the moment is there. Tripura offers the unique example of demographic metamorphosis. Tripura in 1947 or 1901, I think 93% tribal population. Around 47 or so, I read somewhere about 50. Today, tribal population is 28%. So they have virtually become foreigners in their own land. And that is the main issue of Tripura because of systematic infiltration from Bangladesh. And you know, Bangladesh in 2002, there was a Dhaka Declaration, 1999. And that declaration said, India's north is the expanding space for Bangladesh. And they supported some international provision in support of this continuation. So this infiltration from Bangladesh has been a major cause. But in Tripura, another complicating factor was that there were two main tribal insurgent groups, ATTF and AIF. Congress was supporting one and the Marxists were supporting another. This happened in our country. This happened in Punjab. This happened everywhere, the political cutter. But about 10-15 years back, both Congress and other politicians realized that it is unwise. So totally they withdrew. And the Tripura government is the only government where CM has come out with a statement that we have been clear right from the beginning that we cannot do without military, but the problem cannot be solved with military only. So we took administrative, legislative, other measures, and Tripura is the only state where they withdrew Armed Forces Special Power Act without any agitation underway. Because of this clarity that army, and I said openly, I question killing, etc. But you cannot deal with terrorists and others through law only. It is not possible. You have to use this. But we must be honest enough. While we say that military is necessary, we must be honest enough to concede that military alone will not be. So, for example, in Northeast, you have to have at simultaneously a process to say farewell to the arms. That is political dialogue. Then it's concrete measures for economic development. Then some concrete measures for protection of their culture, identity, etc. This kind of holistic approach, that is what is required. Third insurgency that I would like to mention is Assam, very big Ulfa. It rose from foreigners issue. There the main thing was again infiltration from outside, and that offers an example of the youth power, the students. And the high point was the ASU agreement that was with the students, and then AGP government was formed. Assamese take pride in their Ahom origin, and the agitation was against the foreigners, and both tribals, non-tribals, outsiders for it. The violence was terrible, the Assam violence, but later on we had that since Ulfa could be controlled, contained, and now one faction is talking other not, but situation is manageable. But even now, there the main thing is, which is being covered, the economic development of the people and the industries and everything. Because whereas we said the Northeast has not been part of British Empire, Northeast did not take any part in freedom struggle, but Assam did. And there was a Guwahati session of Congress party. So Assam has to be different. The only thing, as I said, is the attitude of the Assam to these communities, which really caused alienation and problems. Now, Mizo insurgency. You see, after Nagaland, Mizos were the first to ask for autonomy. Fizo, Maganide invited Mizos, but Mizos did not join Nagaland. So they were not for secession. There was a drought, a famine. After every 12 years or so, there is enormous rise in rat population because of some bamboo overgrowth. Every 12 years it happens. So there was this famine, and they set up Mizo Famine Relief Fund, MFNF. There was total neglect by government of Assam and government of India. And that is where they felt aggrieved and alienated. And then MFNF became MNF, Mizo National Front. And that was a deadly insurgency where it became necessary to go for aerial bombardment, strafing and grouping of villages, etc., which was not done even in Nagaland. But Mizo insurgency is the only insurgency which has been really defeated in Nepal. Mizo Accord is the only accord. Nagaland Shillong Accord still did not work because all sections of people were not taken into confidence. In Mizo Accord, Lal Thandla was the CM. He had the greatness to resign and ask Lal Denga, the rebel leader, to become the chief minister. And there is some Mizo term, I don't know, Tavlam Baigana or something, which is a combination of spirit of morality, honor and sharing. So in true observance of that spirit, the rebel leader became CM. He was CM for 5 years and later on democratically people brought the first CM back. And Mizoram, since I was in NHRC involved in assessing the quality of governance here and there in other states, Mizoram is one of the well-governed and administered state of the Northeast. Then last little point, Bodo. Bodo's part of Assam. North of Brahmaputra, there are some villages. They did not ask for anything special. They said that we are part of Assam, we must get our due. They were not made even part of the 6th schedule, which was given to some other Dimasa, Rishongs, other tribals. They were denied. So the first they wanted a state within Indian Union, and it did not happen. When reasonable demands are not met, and then they follow the path of violence, so they go for a separate state, and we have again two factions. One faction, they are talking, ready to talk, the other faction is stickling, but this recurrent. So this overall scenario, you find that still the basic root causes have not been addressed. And that is the responsibility of Government of India and the civil society to wean the youth away the way it is being done. Channelize their energies into creative endeavors and stop them from going to insurgency or drug addiction. And as regards their economic development, it has to be economic growth by combining the scientific methods, ecologically strong and stable methods, with the traditional institutions. So you must have heard of Warrior Alvin, who gave a philosophy for the tribals of Northeast, which said, and Nehru followed that, and they said that Northeastern people must be allowed to develop in their own ethos. Nehru said there should be no over-administration of the Northeast. He said that they should be allowed to grow according to their ethos. Another beautiful thing he said, we must revitalize their institutions, work through them and not in suppression of them. When I was DGP, at a small way, I dealt with this problem. Gaon Buda is a very important institution. Earlier they had Gaon Buda, Dubashi, and they constituted the elite, all major things with them. Now Gaon Buda has become a chowkidar, a guardman, all other elites, the new elite, because this new elite has taken a backward step. The egalitarian society has become a new kind of oligarchy, elite oligarchy, where you have got government servant and a contractor and a businessman and a bureaucrat. So there was a threat to ONGC. They were drilling in Assam in certain area, in Nagaland in certain area, and they got a letter from the NSCN, pay 3 lakhs, otherwise we will kidnap your people. They came to me. So I said, I want you to tell your people clearly that DGP says that he cannot protect you on his own and with his means. But give me 2-3 days. I went to Wokha, that village. I called headmen. I had that advantage They would come, sit with me, talk to me. I said, they are drilling. You will get POL, you will get petrol, you will get kerosene. He said, what will I get? I said, Government of India, ONGC has paid 32 crores to Nagaland government. He said, that money has gone to Jamir Saab, the CM. What has come to me? He said, what do it? So, I gave this report to that man when he came. I said, you do one thing. Can we announce that when oil is struck in this area, we shall at least supply free kerosene to all these 5 villages. You see, those villagers say in Nagaland and Northeast, you know the concept of property? My first visit, I said, this river belongs to whom? They said, this village. This hill belongs to him, this village. The property is owned by the community, not by the government. So I said, can we ensure free supply of oil or free supply of kerosene to these people who live? He said, what funny thing, there's no such provision. Nobody took me seriously. Rather they thought something wrong with me that I'm suggesting. And what I mean to say, that when you want to do something with people, find out how we can, and now our new Land Acquisition Act, the way it is framed, excellent. It is all on the basis of our past experiences. And this is what is required. So economic development we have to do in this manner, only then. Other, we must encourage the visits of outsiders, their visits, mainstreaming. Now this is something, this term is used very often. So they hate the condescending attitude of rest of India, because we give them to understand you are not part of the mainstream. You get mainstream. So they ask, what do you mean by mainstream? Is it the central North Indian mainstream? It is predominantly Hindu mainstream? And I, as a police officer, I used to say, mainstream was a mighty clean river. Other rivers used to come and join them, the way Vivekananda explained, that small stream join. The mainstream becomes a nala, a dirty drain. And then we ask other rivers that they are not. So we should first be clear what we mean by mainstream. And second thing they say, and I tell you from experience, people of Northeast, boys and girls, know a lot of things about rest of India. And most of the people in rest of India know very little about North. How many of you know that in Nagaland freedom struggle, there was a person called Rani Gadilio who was hanged by the British in 1932? Do you know it? Very few people know. You don't have to be sorry for that, because many people don't know it. Assam, everywhere, they're local heroes. The way there was a prime minister who was flying to Northeast. He asked a question, whether Kohima is the capital or Imphal is the capital of Nagaland. This kind of abysmal ignorance. When I was DG there, people used to come from Delhi, Home Secretary, Cabinet, and I would request them. I said, give me 4 hours. I want to take to you the nearest public distribution center, and I want to show to them that all the food is distributed by the CM, Mr. Jamir, as a minister at Calcutta, and nothing reaches here. But nobody would dare. They say, we know it. That means Government of India knew what's happening here. They were semblance of order, they were keeping it. But people's problems, going there and looking into them. They were in a hurry. Every man who reached, he was anxious about his seat in the return flight, so that he doesn't get stranded here. This is how. Briefcase posting, they used to call it. Briefcase to mean when an IS officer is posted there, he goes there with a briefcase only, because he doesn't want to shift his family, his luggage, etc. He'll finish his tenure and get back. No identification. And my experience tell me, excellent specimen of human being. You talk to them. They are wonderful people, cheerful. Laughter is their food, hospitable, honest. They are the kind of the people. When I left, the CM was not happy with me. So I told him, I said, you wanted me to proceed on leave, but I wanted to finish my tenure and then leave it. And though he was not happy, all the districts gave me civic farewell. Despite the fact that the CM and others had passed a resolution, we don't want this man. And the government of India, Mr. Pilot said, Mr. Gill will not leave Punjab and Chamanlal will not leave Nagaland. I said, no sir, I finished my tenure and now that I know that CM is not happy, I'm not going to stay, I'll come back. I just came back. But everyone gave. And in Dimapur, I said, openly said, your government will throw me out of Nagaland. I carry a piece of Nagaland in my heart. It will remain there. And it remains there. I love those people. Even now, when I go there, I meet them. And that is the message for the rest of India, that these are the people who are best specimen of humanity, totally neglected and exploited. And despite some crazy things they do, we must find ways to accommodate them. There will be wonderful mosaic. As I say, Northeast is a beautiful mosaic of diverse communities. Let us make it more beautiful. Autonomy is functional autonomy. They function within a certain framework which will keep the whole framework intact. When I said federalization, decentralization. So we have to find, for example, even JP said that ingenuity of Indian Constitution to accommodate the Naga interest and the defense needs. That kind of attempt. Now this 33% resolution draft, when you care for the political leaders that you have who are supporting you. For example, Nagaland, I was even then advocating another feature of Northeast is women empowerment. Women's movement have been very strong in the Northeast. In Manipur in 1905, the British time, there was a rice regulation and women agitated and it was withdrawn. Then alcohol, drug addiction, women. In Nagaland, Naga Mother Association. But here, they easily dropped it. So you have to have rapport with them so that they accept the identity protection does not mean that we will not introduce the other things. The only thing is that we have to go, as I said, in a manner where we revitalize their institutions and also bring modernity in them. That is a difficult task, but that is the task that is to be done. It cannot be maybe. For example, when you say about police, Justice Verma used to say, the police autonomy is as important as the independence of judiciary. Two things are different, independence and autonomy. They both play the role of implementing rule of law. Judiciary is independent. Everything, even transfer posting, now we are discussing. Nothing is decided outside. Autonomy police is that we have a framework within which we work according to law. I should have the freedom to work according to that within that. That is my functional autonomy. That does not mean I am totally free. So totally free, totally independent means no questions will be asked. Nobody will monitor you. Nobody will scrutinize you. That is not. In autonomy, you are free as regards your charter and you will have no interference in that. So that is the difference. For example, the British, they decided that overall control they will keep. The same idea can be extended, but their custom institution, other things can be allowed to continue. Those traditional institutions, but we totally replaced that and we could not effectively impose the other institutions. That is what caused mismatching and problem. One thing we should understand that since it is a beautiful, picturesque place, tourism has a great potential and that could not be achieved because of unrest and conditions. So if it becomes peaceful the way they are trying, there will be. The other thing is investors from outside, you should be clear that even if you bring investors from outside and things are produced, it will be difficult to send them to rest of India because of transportation costs. So it is in India's enlightened interest to have relations, improved relations with Bangladesh, Myanmar, Tibet and Nepal. The future of the North is linked with the future of these states. So transit route from them is the answer. And that brings me to Gujarat doctrine, that we should do for these small states without insisting on reciprocity, that we don't want you match it. But let us first do it. There is tremendous potential for this thing. They were used to call it early Act East, now Look East, Act East, but these phrases have no meaning. The main thing is that are we actually implementing, trying to do it, and that would be possible when we take steps to win them, not militarily, but as equal sovereign nations, convincing Bangladesh, convincing Myanmar that it is our mutual interest. That will make. See, I'm not an expert on that, but I only say that if you study the history of Chinese struggle, so at so many stages, after they had completed the road in the western Xinjiang, that area, they said that since we have built a road infrastructure here, you accept our presence in that area, Karakoram, Sing Sing, and we will accept McMahon line and Arunachal people. Since all along we have been saying no to this deal, so this McMahon line earlier, British time, they feel that this part is our. We don't accept it, and we therefore, this government is rather doing it assertively that way. But this again, because earlier also that forward policy of Mr. Nehru and other things, if you read, so there were certain provocations and there was genuine desire from the other side for peace. If you find that was it, but this is a political matter on which I cannot give comments. They will continue protesting whenever the Lama goes or somebody goes, and we will continue and should assert. Otherwise, if we just leave, we had left it. In 1962, I've been to that area, Tawang area. There were some villages no revenue man had visited for 30-40 years. And suddenly Chinese came and they occupied. And then we realized it's part of India. So our own involvement, and even now I tell you, you may not like to hear it from me. I went to Tawang, the condition of roads, the working of the BRO in that sector, pitiable. And see the way China has built the roads. China has improved the infrastructure. So we are not so serious about it, which we must. You see, I was one of the DGPs and I was given an opportunity to. I said one, in very clear terms, sir, are there unwritten instructions not to monitor development in the Northeast? Because the amount of money that is being pumped, but nobody is questioning. A road is not built, but bridge is constructed and repaired every year. The wells are not dug. It happened in Rajasthan also, but their maintenance is going on. So this actual monitoring of that was the main point. And second thing that I brought to notice, that those who go from our rest of India there and they serve there, they must demonstrate that they like the way of life, they like the people. But if you go, if you don't want to, I may be foolish, but when I worked in Kalahandi, Kolhapur, Barangir area, I used to go and drink their water. And everybody would say, pani nahi pina. So I said, these are minor things. When you sit with the people and you share this thing, that kind of commitment in civil servants, that is the second thing. And third thing I said, at that time, I may share it, Naga and Kuki clashes were going on. And Indian Army, government production, we will take side. We will help Nagas to defeat Kukis. I said, this is immoral. And I fought with the CM. There were two factions. He wanted me to help one. I said, sir, I came here with the idea of establishing the neutrality of Nagaland police. To me, both are undergrounds A and B. I may not be able to control with them, but I will not make a distinction. So I brought it to the notice of CM that this policy of security forces, can't nikalna. I will put it very openly. I may be a fool, but I never accepted that. Because we cannot control. You use them under control, different. But when they go out of control, so bringing that kind of neutrality was the thing. I don't think much care was taken. Every time, every DG gets an opportunity. So many have spoken like me earlier also. But political masters, they have their own way. They will learn a lesson from you, from the people. And that is what is required, not from us. That in a situation of terrorism, insurgency, left-wing extremism, police cannot handle it on its own. You have to use the security forces and army. That means you have to take military action. But what I said, in view of my experience in Tripura and other, that only military measures will not clear. So simultaneously, this is what the British did, that on one front, we will act professionally and deal violence with greater violence. But at the same time, we make it clear to the people that their rights and liberties of innocent people are sacred to us. We work in a manner where collateral damage is very high. Collateral damage cannot be totally avoided. But if you have the enlightened way of looking at things, the collateral damage can be minimized. Militarization is accompanied by large-scale torture in a general way. I stop that. Just raiding places on actual information basis, not stopping people. So there are ways to use military thing in a manner that ordinary people are not affected. They are the force multipliers. They will help you. So this is what I have been advocating. See the point at that made, that the governor in our scheme of things is an appointee of the president and he acts on advice of the CM, that means politically. So in Northeast they realized that if we have a governor who follows dictates and instructions from them, even so that 371, the special provision is that the governor will have independent say in the matter of land. And I told you that no governor except General Nair. He used to hold review meetings. He used to ask questions to army. How are you deploying forces? Places like Arunachal Pradesh and others, the governors must exercise those powers. But since they are appointees of the central government, I had a governor. Now let me be more blunt. I had a governor. I went to him. Some incident had taken place. And he agreed with my assessment that some politicians had engineered it. Nagaland. And he agreed with my assessment that it was engineered by some politicians. I said, sir, why don't you speak to Home Minister? Because then you speak. Sir, I'm a DGP. I'm not in a position. Why don't you speak? And he says, हम कहेंगे तो फिर हमारा क्या होगा? And that day I said, sir. And I did not go to him after that. I spent 1 year that kind of boycott. Because when you have powers and when situation is so clear and you don't take action, that you don't want to take any risk. Most of them are like that. I feel with pain that nothing wrong with our beautiful constitution, excellent constitution. All the provisions are there, all laws are there. We need people with guts and people with compassion, people with understanding of the issues. And that's why it's lacking. Development as defined in by UN in terms of GDP, in terms of per capita income. We have 5 billionaires in the list of 10, but what about the other lists? HDI, which comes every year. Human Development Report, India is at number 35 in the list of near Zanzibar. So development in India is not being translated into human development. And Human Development Index takes into consideration infant mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, recruitment in schools, dropout from schools, connectivity, livelihood, job, then conditions of job. When you take these into consideration, then human development. That is true development. So if we want to promote development of the country, we should follow this. Otherwise, our enthusiasm will create billionaires, more and more billionaires. People will become at fantastic rate, but they will be insensitive to the plight of the have-not. You will, as I say very frankly, this development will make rich richer, it will make poor less poor, but it will increase the distance between the poor and the rich. And IMF has admitted it. And they said that this is the defining feature of 21st century, the growing disparity. And they further said that the societies which are facing the problem of this growing disparity are more vulnerable to the emergence of non-state violent actors, terrorism, etc. This is that. The Oxfam study says in 2016 there were 65 billionaires in the world who had 50% of the world's wealth. Next year it became 8 billionaires who have same, and soon it may become 1 or 2. So what is this? Concentration of wealth in few hands, which goes against the provision of Indian Constitution, that the economic order must work in a manner that there is no concentration, that the inequality of status and facility must be totally removed, and equality of income and wealth cannot be totally removed. It should be minimized, and that is what Indian Constitution says. You see, when I said that they distrust and they rather hate rest of India, they don't hate, distrust people of India. All their anger is directed against the government, the local government there and the central government. And as I said that they were not averse to being part of India, they only did not like to be grouped in Assam as an inferior tribe. So if we understand that, there is no conflict. If we can convince them, and now are we not doing them? The boys and girls are coming to IIMs, others they are teaching there. Job opportunities they are there. We should promote it further. Not public relations type of thing, just bring a troupe of dancers. No, let them come, stay with some families, our people go there, and that kind of thing. So there's a possibility, and there are people who are doing this. You see, opportunities there are limited. Opportunities have to be created. And you are very right that for every state we should create opportunities that people don't come. You see, when people come out, there are two factors, push factor and pull factor. When I talk about bonded labor, say, so pull factor means you can never control. People will always go to better places for hire. Push factor means I don't want to go, and circumstances are pushing me. So those who don't want to come out, they must get, and that is needed. That should be done. That is very, still it's not industrial, that should be there. But some people, they will be keen to come out, and we should welcome them. Both things. You see, they have major role because all the provisions of the Constitution are actually implemented through the bureaucrats. Otherwise, these things remain on paper only. For example, I said their customary law, traditions, etc. Now, till 2003 or 4, when I visited Assam from National Human Rights Commission for the first time, people senior in police, etc. and administration were not sure about the separation of executive and judiciary. So separation is total elsewhere. There it is not total, it is partial. But civil servants, they were not clear about it. Which cases can be tried by the... So it is the civil servants who will implement that. And moreover, they will prepare them through their conduct and work for adopting other things from the rest of India. That is what I say, that civil servants should work in a manner. This is what I said in the beginning, that their complaint, their charge, that people in the rest of India know very little about us. And even now you see the education policy, you see our textbooks and other things. So how much knowledge are we giving to the people about Northeast? That must be done, and greater exchange, not only of businessmen and traders of our today, but common people from Northeast and from the rest of India, so that this assimilation takes place. Things are brightening up, I must say, no doubt about it. China had actively supported insurgency in Northeast till 1974 or 75. Actively. The insurgents from Manipur, Nagaland, used to go to Lhasa, Peking, all these top leaders here. In 1975, when Naga movement got divided in two, then China said that you unite, otherwise we are not supporting you. So Chinese direct support after that was not there as regards this deal. Bangladesh, depending upon the government, has been providing sanctuary to our, elements. If we have Sheikh Hasina, things will be all right here. If we have another minister, so they have been doing it. I'm afraid now Nepal also, because Nepal, these elections, a Marxist government is coming into power. China will try to be very friendly with that government. And we have not given a good account of ourselves to Nepal recently, that traffic, that blockade, etc. And our attitude that we will decide who becomes the CM and that kind of thing. So this is another danger which I think. So see, main thing is, Nambiar, when we are weak, then outsider can't. If we are strong and if we are clear about it, then external. So security has external dimension, internal dimension. Now I say that internal security is more important, because when you have internal security in a shambles, the external security will be affected. The way in J&K, etc. It is because we cannot keep our house in order, and Pakistan has a free hand there. So ultimately it is internal security. And internal security is not a military matter. Internal security is meeting the needs of the people and doing justice. Thank you.